Hey everybody, back here on YouTube. It's good to be back on here again. I want to go ahead and do a different video. I know I do a lot of political talk, and you all know that. I want to do something a little bit different today. I think sometimes when it comes to conservatives and conservatism, I think sometimes what we do is I think conservatives are really good about talking about policy, but not making an argument as to why certain policies work and certain policies don't. But showing the life application of it, showing the practicality of those things. I think that's key. I think that's crucial. Understanding that the way we live as individuals has a great impact on our futures. I think that's a message that needs to be shared more. We talk about policy this, talk about bills passing in the House that, but I think where we really need to improve is talking about life consequences, talking about the impacts that our decisions have on our lives and on the lives of others. I think that's something that has really impacted my life on a personal level. So I want to share a little bit of my life with you. I'm an average guy. I grew up in a black middle class home. Grew up in a large family. 6 sisters, 4 brothers, large family. Love my siblings very much. I would say just an average life. I played baseball when I was in high school. I was homeschooled. My mother homeschooled me. My dad was a computer programmer, and he would work so many hours. I'd see him work some weeks 70 hours a week. He would travel from the small town we lived in. The town I grew up in was called Munson. It was in Massachusetts, really small town. We were the only black family in town, like literally, like the only black family in town. If you looked at the census of the city, it said the black population was like 0.13%, and that was my family. Later on, there were more black people that moved into the town, but we moved into like an all-white town. And there were situations that would come up sometimes where, sometimes the members of the community would wonder what my dad was doing there, and my dad experienced being pulled over by a police officer. It was not a pleasant experience for him. The officer pretty much asked him what he was doing there. My father explained that he lived in the community, and the officer let him go home, but that's never a comfortable situation. Which is why, when it comes to being a conservative, I've never denied individual instances where you wonder, was there prejudice in that situation? Did they pull me over because I was a black person in a white community? It's a question that many black people have had. I think it's a question many people have had at times. With that being said, though, we became very well known in the community. One of my older brothers, actually my oldest brother, was very talented, very good basketball player. People in the community really appreciated him. He was very popular. And, it was his efforts and his personality. People were drawn to him as a result of those things. So for me, seeing my brother and seeing the love that people had for him in the community, not because they looked at him as some kind of charity case, but because they loved him as an individual. People adored my brother. I never really grew up with a victimhood mentality. I mean, I'd heard about what had happened with my dad and being pulled over, but I also seen what happened with my brother. And in seeing those things, I never adopted a victimhood complex. I adopted an awareness complex of, hey, there are situations where you might question someone's behavior, but I never adopted a spirit of victimhood. It's just not something I did. I saw my brother, who was beloved by many people, because he was just a lovable guy. He was somebody that people adored being around, and They loved his character. They loved his effort and his play on the basketball court. So, I mean, I didn't see my brother as a victim. I mean, the ladies all loved him. I mean, I consider that to be success in so many ways. So fast forward, because I grew up in Massachusetts, so like I moved down here to North Carolina about 14 years ago. So I grew up in Massachusetts when I was a kid. That was the first half of my life. Fast forward to the second half of my life. My parents moved us down here to North Carolina. I've been in North Carolina for 14 years now. I was homeschooled, as I mentioned earlier. I chose to go to ministry school. I wanted to get a degree in theology. So I got my degree in theology. What I did was since I knew what I wanted to do, I just went ahead, took my GED, finished up with that, got my degree, associate's degree in theology, bachelor's degree in Christian education. And things weren't necessarily easy when I got out. I sort of just took a normal route. I got my degree and just started taking small jobs. I started off minimum wage job working for Dollar General. I was at Dollar General for about 2 or 3 years. I was making $7.50 an hour, and then I got a promotion to assistant manager, and I was making $9.50 an hour. And granted, I wasn't making the money I wanted to make, but I didn't complain though. I worked hard. I was appreciative of the fact that a company saw me as somebody that was a good fit for their company and as someone that brought value to the company. I took ownership of everything I did. I treated the business like it was my own. And even though there were times where I didn't necessarily think I was being treated the way I should have been, I did my job. I was respectful. I didn't talk badly about my boss. And over time, I realized that Dollar General wasn't quite the place I wanted to be. So I put in an application at Walmart for an assistant manager position. I put it in, and a year later, they contact me about an opening for the assistant manager position. I get hired, and in that, I more than double what I was making at Dollar General. Now, I've moved around a bit throughout the years, through a few other companies, and I'm thankful, though, that in all those moves, God has provided for me, and He's given me a way to grow, a way to influence others, and a way to in many ways be reliant on Him each day, but He gives me a path and He gives me a direction. But why am I saying all this? Well, in the hard work, in the character, in the showing respect to the boss, even though sometimes I wasn't showing respect to, in showing up on time and being respectful to my coworkers, in those things, I never expected anyone to give me anything. I didn't want any handouts. I had some family members of mine that suggested, hey, you're making $9.50 an hour working here, why don't you apply for food stamps? I didn't do that. I didn't want government assistance. I was of the mindset that if the government can give you assistance, they can also take it away from you. I didn't know that was a conservative principle at the time. It's just something for me where I just wasn't interested in it. I wasn't interested in the government giving me money because I thought, well, if they're giving it, they can take it away from me. I didn't go around borrowing money. I'm not interested in borrowing money. I'm interested in saving my money. I'm reminded of how the Bible says that the best way to get wealth is to build it up little bit by little bit. Now, whether or not you're a biblical person, whether or not you follow the Bible, principles are principles. It's hard to dispute that one. Put a little bit aside, and over time it builds up. It's amazing how fast it builds up. But, once again, the conservative principle. This was conservative principle, and I didn't even realize it was conservative principle. Not going into debt, not living on the government, being self-reliant, not having faith in government, but having faith in God ultimately. These are conservative principles. And many people on the left and the right share these values much more than we realize. I think sometimes where we lose people is, as conservatives, is we try to get into policy too much. But we don't talk about just simple practicality. Do you believe the government needs to pay for everything you have? Some people will say yes, but I found that most people say no. They don't believe the government's supposed to pay for everything. First of all, the government doesn't pay for anything. We pay for things as the taxpayers. That's another story entirely. But in my life, I never viewed myself as a victim. I never saw myself as a victim. Growing up in my household and seeing my brother, victimhood was never on the table for me. It was never an option. I never viewed myself as oppressed because I realized I wasn't oppressed. In the end, I controlled my destiny, not some random white person that I didn't know. I just never adopted that ideology that there was this constant power struggle with people I couldn't see. So I want to encourage all of you who might have the mindset that the man's out to get me, I just can't win, white supremacy that, racist system that. Don't get caught up in that stuff. Don't internalize those things. If an average guy like me, who just, got his high school equivalency, got a degree at a local seminary school, worked in retail for years, and just built my way up. If I could do those things, so can you. I went from poverty, abject poverty, to the middle class in 2 years. I know that might seem lofty for people, but it is possible. You might have difficult situations. You might be in an area that's struggling economically, but never underestimate the power of your effort, and never underestimate the power of God. If you hold on to those things, if you hold on to those principles of faith in God, faith in family, faith in myself, and faith in my country and my fellow countrymen, you'll be just fine. That's all I got for today. As I said, I wanted to do something a little bit different today. If you like what you saw, you like what you heard, go ahead, click the like button, click the subscribe button, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And that's going to do it for me. Y'all have a good night. Bye.